I do character class. This is pretty late in the year. You'd think character class would be one of our first classes. But I've just found time and again is that you have to let your character develop. You have to let your character grow. You have to let your character become who they need to be on the page. And if we rock up with these preconceived ideas, I don't know here who has raised a child, but you kind of have this idea of the child that you will be raising, and then you get the actual child that you have to raise, and those aren't two necessarily the same the same people. Okay. You're as surprised as everyone else. So I like character class to be a little bit later in the year because I like my characters to reveal themselves to me first. Because also what I sometimes find is when I try to create a character to a certain formula or idea, it becomes a very oh, I have to be offended now because Mia said I am easily offended. And that kind of these like really weird arguments that my characters have. Okay. So I like my characters to I discover them as they discover themselves. Okay. So, and that would be why that is. How are we feeling about our characters in our story at the moment? I'm just going to start at the top. If we can just quickly briefly cover how everyone's going. So, Di, what's happening with your folk?
Um, I think I like them, but they're quite old now.
Oh,
So I'm not sure if they're changing at all.
okay.
Or if so I'm not sure I've got all the right characters in there, basically, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Old as in just you've spent a lot of time with them, or old as in physically like by years?
No, no, I think I spend a lot of time with them.
Okay.
So
All right.
so I think that they're a bit familiar,
Okay. All right.
mostly,
Just yeah.
which
So
is not a
sometimes
bad thing.
no, you just need some distance from them sometimes, and just awareness that there has to be change or growth. Even the lack of change or growth can be the arc. Okay. You always think that you have
Mm.
to have this complete metamorphosis of a character, but sometimes refusal to change could be the driver in the story. Okay. So I'm not too concerned about that, but as long as you can just, when you see them in your head, they come up as different people. Okay. So cool. Audrey, how are you feeling about your crowd?
Yeah, they're interesting. I think they've changed a lot. The main protagonist, obviously, I knew how she would sort of change, but also there are surprises. And then the people around her also changed a lot. And I think last week I said that I had to change a viewpoint to just show that as well. Um, yeah, it's been interesting actually. So
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
All right.
they're alive and they're living in my head.
For the moment. Wahahaha.
Like the zombie song in my head, in my
In
head.
my head. Oh goodness. No, very cool. Um, Jenna, how's what's happening with your gang?
Yeah, I feel like I've got a good sense of what my characters are, but they definitely need development. Like I know that that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to work on through the year. I'm trying to give that. I'm really worried about their voice, I think. Or not worried. I'm not worried now, but I know that's something I need to sort further along. I think maybe like the main character and his friends' voices are probably quite similar, which I guess is
Okay.
good in a way because they're part of the same little gang of four that grew up together. So they do need to have some similarities in the way they talk to each other. But maybe I need to work out how I can keep them having that shared kind of identity, but also being a bit more individual.
Yeah.
And I think I've brought in one character who's like a very peripheral, one-off character, perhaps, or maybe she'll come back. Maybe she's important. We don't know yet. Um, and I kind of pitched her as quite a lot older than I meant to, and it was really interesting in the feedback that came back of the language she was using. Um,
Okay.
so I was sort of imagining her in her 60s and or 70s maybe, and everyone imagined her being kind of 90, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So yeah.
Ah, good.
I'm very aware that that's something that and description are things that I need to be beginning to think about now and maybe trying to work into this second half. But I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to have to revisit it on the rewrite,
Um,
100%.
That's very hard. Okay, please don't underestimate that. I actually have separate character rewrites. I call them character rewrites because I spend time
Mm.
with a specific character to say that this is what I have to work on. You're going to see with the rewrite, you start incredibly ambitious and you're going to fix this and you're going to fix this and you're going to fix this, and they're all little changes, but woo, okay. It's a lot of balls to keep up in the air. So, you know, if you, for example, have these two Eton schoolboys, you know, they are going to sound very posh and they are going to sound, you know, they're going to reference the same things, you know. Whereas if you had an Eton schoolboy and, you know, someone who's throwing around, you know, Cockney slang and stuff like that, that's an easy differentiation to make. But it's very, very difficult if you have two characters of the same social class, of the same background, of the same economic class, all of those things. It's hard. Okay. So look at things like sentence lengths, look at things like he talks a lot, he doesn't talk a lot, you know, things, you know, shorter sentences, longer sentences. Does the one read a lot and the one reads less? Because then you can inflate the one's vocabulary slightly and the other one can, you know, tease a little bit more. There are ways to do it, but it does take thinking about. Okay.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Yes,
Is the
those sort
one
of little
smart?
tips that
Yeah, is the one very smart, is the one less smart? If you think of Good Will Hunting, you know, he has different conversations than Matt Damon has different conversations than Ben Affleck can have, just because of, you know, not that Ben Affleck is a not clever character, he's just not as smart as Matt Damon. So there are ways to play with it, but it's good that you're aware of it. But at the moment, you're juggling enough balls, just
yeah.
on the page. Okay, if they're on the page, you can shape them. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Mary McKenna, how are you? Well, I know how you are. How are your characters?
Yeah, I love my characters. I think they're great fun. My lead character is such a villain and such a naughty boy, and he just keeps getting into trouble, which I love. And he's got two opposing characters in economic terms: the head of society and the archbishop, who's just full of his own self, and then the little older widow lady on Irish Street, who's a kind of cunning survivor at a street level rather than a society level. So yeah, the one I'm struggling with at the minute is the love interest for the protagonist. In that, the last hour that we just had, I, instead of writing further in the story, I just did an exercise of what if and what comes next, and went back and forward in the story, and I found a pathway for her that I think will be stronger than the one I'm on now. So yeah, I'm going to tie them in together earlier in the story rather than bringing in a love interest bomb. I'm going to just tie them in earlier and have problems in their relationship rather than outside the relationship. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really happy with the characters and where it's going to go.
Cool. Okay, that sounds very fun. So just, yeah, keep going. It's nice to play those games and to see what the options are. Suzanne, your Mary Can, what are they up to?
um, well, my cast of characters has actually been, I mean, this year I'm writing part 2 of a story, so my cast of characters has actually been established last year, and my main character is a very quirky nerd anyway, so she can pretty much do whatever she wants because it'll always fit her personality. So I'm not scared of making her do funny things. But I think I've realized that this year my story is going to be a little more action driven. Last year's story was more about establishing the character and making it's like a coming of age story, more or less. And this year, I think I'm just letting her loose. So she's yeah, she has a few tasks on her hands, and so it's more action driven than character driven. I might actually have to go over the story again and see if there can be some personal development for her. Right now, I don't think it's really necessary for her, but I'm sure that the action will actually, I mean, it will have an impact on her. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to see how it goes. This year, I'm pantsing my way through.
That's okay. Go for it and see where it takes you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all good. Awesome, Tess. Let's hear. Hey, let me know how it's going in general. I don't get to see you as often as the other ladies. And then what are your characters up to?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in a place where it's like flowing quite easily.
Good.
So like, so yeah, they're in the, I'm trying to build up the love interest kind of the dynamic there. And the main thing I'm pondering at the moment is that I wrote a collection of short stories last year, just as like practice to get us going. And I'm finding that I would like rereading those short stories, like the character dial was like way cranked up. Like everyone was so like visual, you know, and like whereas I'm like looking at my characters now and they're feeling quite I don't know, normal. And so I'm
Okay.
kind of like trying to figure out like, is it the short story format that I was like, where I like just made people more of what they needed to be? Now they're kind of just very normal people. So I'm just like kind of focusing through that. Another thing that I'm busy working through to also kind of help build characters. I'm not sure if this is like an actual technique, but I have a character and a friend, and they make alternating decisions. And I'm kind of using like the consequences of the different decisions to try and build each other's characters, like a contrast to each other. Yeah, sort of the things I'm thinking about at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, so short stories, that's why I like short stories, because they're these very potent little containers to tell a story in, you know.
Yeah.
And you can't give it away too soon because there is no, you know, there's barely a build-up, you know. It's kind of like it's about as subtle as a punch in the face. Okay. Whereas a novel is more like kind of, you know, the slow twist of the knife. So it's you build it up and you build it up. So it is a matter of finding the balance between the two, because you don't want like no cranking with the short story, with the
Yeah.
novel. So, you know, it is something that you'll start building up more and stuff like that. But it's just because we have a bigger character arc, it is going to take a little bit longer. That may be why it feels like that. But I mean, just the fact that you're aware of that at this point, you know, it's just something that you'll start highlighting. So again, character, I have like a whole character rewrite where I'll choose 1 or 2 characters and just work on those characters going through it. And then you'll know, like at the end, you'll know it's the ending of your story impacts so much, everything basically. And once you have ending and you know who's alive, you know who's dead, you know who betrayed who, you know who gave away the secret, you know the one who, you know, stole the key or whatever, that once you have that information, it helps so much to inform who those characters are. Because, you know, like mine is quite a brutal thing where my love interest was always very nurturing and caring, and he always stood back and he was always in the supportive role for my very strong MC. Whereas my MC takes quite a dark twist at the end of the novel. So he's the one who basically has to stand up, and he's going to have to, you know, make some very, very bad decisions. So then I realized he couldn't be as weak from the, you know, not that he's weak, but he couldn't be as kind and supportive. There had to be more conflict, because suddenly at the end he was like, no, and you know, like, okay, where did you come from, you know? So that those are things that build up, but you only know that once you have the whole thing, and that'll influence everything for you. Okay, so not too worried about that right now. The fact that we're thinking about it already is really cool. Okay. Cool stuff. Okay, I am going to start now. I start this class with a quote, just trigger warning. It is about addiction, specifically alcoholism. But it's just unfortunately one of those things that illustrates my point really, really well. And every time I think I'm going to find happy, nice quotes, they just aren't as effective. So if you'll bear with me, there's just a few things I'm going to show you on screen first, and then we'll start chatting a bit more about character. Okay, so the quote that I use is... Kirk Franklin. I'm not that I know who he is. If you do know, you're welcome to share that information. But 2 twin boys were raised by an alcoholic father. One grew up to be an alcoholic, and when asked what happens, he said, "I watched my father." The other grew up and never drank in his life. When he asked what happened, he said, "I watched my father." 2 boys, same dad, 2 different perspectives. Your perspective will determine your destination. And the same thing goes for your character. Okay. I don't know if you've ever, I always joke about my brother, you know, I mean, I look at him and I go like, how, we only like apart 15 months apart. And I like look at him and go like, how did we grow up in the same house? I mean, how, like my mom said the same thing to you as she said to me, and like, how did you interpret it like that? You know, it just, that's how drastically different we become as people and where it comes from. Okay. So that to me was always a very interesting take on character. Like, why, if this thing happens to this specific character, do they react this specific way? Okay. if your character is falsely accused, why do they fight it? Why don't they just go sit there and wait for someone else to solve their problem? Okay. If your character has to trek across the country and return home, why are they the ones going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to fix this? Why aren't they the ones sitting there? Okay. What makes your character the character they are? Okay. Now, if you ever have studied psychology, this is like the most basic breakdown of Psychology 101, okay? Human beings are made up of physiological aspects, sociological aspects, and psychological aspects, okay? So what happens is all of those things, physiological is what does your character look like? How gorgeous are they? I'm sorry, I spelled that wrong as well. How gorgeous are they? How ugly are they? How tall are they? How short are they? What do they look like? Are they very fast? Are they very slow? Are they very athletic? Are they naturally talented in this? Physiological, okay? Sociological is usually the economic circumstances, the political circumstances, the world around your character. Okay, were they the poorest family in a really, really rich neighborhood? Were they the richest family in a very poor neighborhood? Were they and the people very, very outspoken in their community about what was happening in the world? Kind of sociological. How were they shaped by the world around them that they grew up in? Okay. And then, of course, psychological is their mental aspect. It's that specific one, referring back to the quote, why did one child choose this path and the other child chose this path? Okay. So even if you just at the most basic level, go write your character's name in there where the smiley face is, and just go do the 3 levels, physiological, psychological, and sociological, and just jot it down. This is a great way to start your character biography. Okay. Just to say that how do these things affect who they are? Sociological often has a lot to do with backstory. Psychological is the emotion. Look at the mother wound. Look at all of those things, what happens. And then, as I said, physiological. Are they very talented? What sets them apart? Is it a complete lack of talent? All of those chosen one fun things. Okay. Then one of my favorite quotes about character comes from James N. Frey, who wrote How to Write a Damn Good Novel 1 and 2. And he coined the term homo fictus. Readers demand that homo fictus be more handsome or ugly, ruthless or noble, vengeful or forgiving, brave or cowardly, and so on than real people are. Homo fictus has hotter passion and colder anger. He travels more, fights more, loves more, changes more, has more sex, lots more sex. Homo fictus has more of everything. Even if he is plain, dull, and boring, he'll be more extraordinary in his plainness, dullness, and boringness than his real-life counterparts. Now, do your characters check any of these boxes? So to me, this is always like the perfect depiction of James Bond. Okay, he travels more, fights more, has more sex. He's just so much cooler than everyone else. He's just so much better than everyone else. Why does he always triumph? What does he do? And then we have the plain, dull, and boring characters as well. What is that story? I think it's Stranger Than Fiction. Where the writer is writing and the IRS consultant starts hearing his voice being narrated. I think it's Emma Thompson, and is it Will Ferrell? But he could not be plainer, duller, and more boring. Okay, and then the lady with the bakery is just way more exciting and out there and bouncy and friendly than anyone else is. Okay, so your character doesn't have to be a full-on James Bond. We do write, it's almost like a stage where we're edging more towards our anti-heroes or our more normal characters. I hesitate to use the word normal because, I mean, what is normal anyway? But they are just more, we tend more to lean towards anti-heroes, and even our anti-heroes, they're more dedicated to the cause than anyone else would be. Things that irritate me become a cause for them. So just kind of think about homo fictus when you create your character. Okay. Then just quickly some theory. We show character through their thoughts, their interiority, the viewpoint that we put on the page, their physical description, Okay, what do they look like? What do they sound like? Their body language and their action. Their descriptions of other characters. What your character notices about other characters tells me a lot about them. And then if you have opened your story to other viewpoints, other characters' descriptions of them. So how does my character perceive themselves, and how do other characters perceive them? Okay, so these are all tools at your disposal. We're not going to look at that yet. Okay, so normal is a setting on the washing machine. Thank you, Audrey. Yeah, it's a great quote, Tess. I also love it. It's one of my favorites. Okay, so let's go back to the very basic theory. So if you remember in the beginning of the year when we did the plotting classes, I encourage you to have 4 characters. Okay. You would most likely by now have more characters because you have set this little person out into the world and they've encountered other people and stuff. But of course, less is always more. The fewer characters you have, the stronger you force your plot to be. Because as beginner writers, we have a little character fest, and every week we get stuck. We go, oh, wait, there's another character. Every new character comes with a new setting, and you end up inflating your word count without adding to your plot or to your story. Okay. That is very extreme. And if you have more than 4 characters, no one is going to panic about that too much. But if you're sitting on a cast of 30 or 40 characters and we're only in week 30, I'm gonna just say it, you have too many characters. Okay. So your character will encounter other characters in their world. Okay. So we have main character, okay, usually our antagonist and our protagonist. Then we have our secondary characters. This is the friend, the love interest. This is our supporting cast, okay? And then usually you have what we call the walk-ons, or this is the waitress, this is the receptionist, this is the guy at the petrol station, this is the can you please pass the salt person, okay? They're incidental to the scene. And my rule of thumb is usually, can I replace this character with an inanimate object? Okay. If I have a 3-page description of this character that I'm going to kill off on page 4, why do I need that? Could this not just have been a newspaper headline? If I spend 5 pages describing the messenger, never ever to see them again, does it need to be a messenger, or can it just be a letter? Okay, that's usually how I judge whether I need that character or not. Quite often, if you only see a character once, I would be if it's at the gas station and you only see the character at the gas station, that's fine. But just kind of think about why we need that character then if we aren't going to see them again. Okay, especially if you've named a character. Naming is usually an indication that we will meet this character again and again. Okay, so let's look at our 4 core characters, and everything comes back to the story goal. Is there anyone here at this point who cannot tell me that they have a story goal? No one shaking their heads, no one's making eye contact. Who does not have a story goal? Do you all have a goal for your characters to do at this point in time? Okay, all right. So your 4 core characters, your protagonist, your antagonist, your friend character, and your love interest. So your protagonist is quite simply the character who is in pursuit of the goal. That is the function of the protagonist. Yes, they have to be cool. Yes, we have to like them. Yes, they have to help us, whatever. But their function is to pursue the goal. That is why we're there with them. We want to see whether they achieve it or not. It's to pursue the goal. It's not necessarily to achieve the goal. Okay, they don't have to win, but they have to try. In Short Story School, we did the Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling. We went through that a while ago. And one of the rules is we will respect a character more, we'll like a character more for trying than for succeeding. Okay, and I can just love that. All right, your character doesn't have to win. So your protagonist achieves the story goal or pursues the story goal. And that is why we are here. We want to see the pursuit of the story goal. Your antagonist opposes the story goal. Okay, they're in opposition. They don't have to be evil. They don't have to be an axe-wielding serial killer. They do not, if it's two best friends, okay, who are competing for a scholarship, okay, they're equally good, they're great, they train together, they practice together, but they both want the same thing. There is going to be conflict at some point, but it does not have to be a Tonya Harding story. Okay, it can still be support, it can still be disappointment, it can still be whatever you need it to be. Okay, so protagonist, antagonist. Then we have two supporting characters. We have the friend character and we have the love interest. Okay, again, we're going to look at them in relation to the story goal. Protagonist pursues the goal, antagonist opposes the goal. The friend character does what your friends do for you. They help you pursue the goal. So the friend character and the protagonist usually have three things in common. It is the shared goal. They usually have shared morals. Okay, meaning this is the person I can phone to help me bury the body. This is the person who's going to give me up to the police, not the same morals. Okay. This is, the head of the PTA would not most obviously be best friends with a town stripper. Okay. It could make for a very, very interesting story. Maybe she moonlights as the town stripper, who knows? But generally, it's the same kind of people. Okay. Then, so the friend character, shared goals, shared morals, and then usually a shared past. The shared past is how you work in a lot of your backstory without having these big chunks of this is what happened, this is how we got here. Because the friend character already knows the trouble with mom, they already know whose brother's an addict, they already know which uncle owes which uncle money, okay? That's already known. And then our last character is the love interest. Now, the love interest either is the goal, as in Princess in the Tower. They can also be the catalyst, which is the inciting moment, the character that sets the story on its path. For example, in Braveheart, he didn't want to go to war. He didn't want to go to war until they killed his wife. And then he said, okay, let's go kill some English. Then the love interest is the goal. It's a kidnapping story. The love interest is the goal because you want to get them back, the loved one. They're often the catalyst, or they have no interest in the protagonist's goal. So they lure the protagonist away from their goal. Okay, that is if your character wants to be the CEO and he's staying late, he's doing the MBA, he's hopefully not at a Coldplay concert, but that is usually where the protagonist wants, or the love interest wants the protagonist for themselves. Okay. It is the wife going, come home, help me put the kids to bed, let's have dinner, let's be a family, we have enough money, we don't need more prestige. And the protagonist is, no, I want the promotion, I want to do better by my family, this is what I want to do. And then sometimes your love interest can be a little bit underdeveloped, but it also depends on how important it is. So for example, if you are writing romance, the love interest is a very, very prominent character. Quite often, the love interest can be your antagonist. It's forced proximity, it's enemies to lovers, etc. Very, very popular tropes. A love interest in a detective story would kind of take a little bit of a back seat. And the function most often of a love interest in a detective story is they are usually either killed, they're estranged, they're put in danger in some way, it's the angry ex-wife, it is the estranged adult children. Those can all be the love interest. And the function of those characters in a detective novel is to show me how dedicated the detective is to his job. Okay, he keeps choosing his work over his family, over his love interest. Okay. Remember, a love interest does not have to be romantic or sexual. It can be a wife, it can be a partner, whatever, but it can also be any loved one in the character's life. Okay. Who would the villain threaten? Who would the villain try to kidnap? Who would the villain try to kill? Okay. The friend character and the love interest are great characters to kill off or to put into danger. Okay. Ned got kidnapped in every second Nancy drew. Okay. You kind of thought he would have caught on by now and figured out how not to get kidnapped, but Ned getting kidnapped and Nancy having to go save him is a very big part of the trope. Okay. So those are great characters to put in danger and to add conflict and to make your character's life even harder. Okay. So let's say the guy wants to go for the CEO position and his wife is very angry. So at the company Christmas party, she divulges information that she shouldn't. And then, you know, out of spite or out of anger or out of ignorance, whatever it needs to be. And then, you know, she jeopardizes his appointment as CEO, for example. Okay. So go see what comes out of that. Is there anyone who doesn't have these 4 characters who are unclear? Do you perhaps have more than one friend? Do you perhaps have more than one love interest?
I guess it's also sometimes the characters can flip into each other.
Definitely. Okay. That is, sorry, interesting term. Fringing is when you make a love interest character kill them off so the MC has a revenge arc. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Fringing.
Word I've learned recently. It's worth a Google. Fringing.
Interesting. Okay. No, so what also happens is, yes, that's where stories get interesting. So when I say you only have 4 characters, it's not, it doesn't mean they're static. It doesn't mean they stay throughout the whole story. A story gets interesting. So what's annoying about stories, okay, is when you have this cast of characters and they're pursuing the goal and they're figuring out who the bad guy is. And then suddenly bad guy comes in from left field, 7 states over 12 years away. No one saw this coming and whoosh, in comes this bad guy. Okay. It's way cooler if the bad guy's been in the story all from the beginning. Okay. Who has watched Untamed on Netflix? Okay. Go watch Untamed on Netflix and then see how we can identify these 4 characters. Okay. More than they are. But it is just interesting to see who was holding information, there is more than one bad guy, but it's just interesting to see who was withholding information and what was the bigger betrayal, etc., etc. Okay. It's also quite a big story. If you're scared of heights, maybe not. It is violent, but it's a fun story to go watch. Okay, so make it easy for yourself and work with these 4 core characters. Okay. So that's also what we're talking about. I thought this is exactly my next point, is I thought the other characters did that. Okay. The friend character. So the example I often use here is the detective story. So let's say we have 2 cops and it's a protagonist and his partner, and they've been partners for years. They have been in pursuit of the serial killer. They're going to catch this bad guy. That's what they want to do. So shared goals, shared morals, shared past, because they've been working together for years. Shared morals, they're both cops, right side of the law. And shared goal is to catch the serial killer. Okay. Then as the story progresses, the clues, evidence goes missing, weird things start happening. Every time the partner isn't there, something happens and he goes, dude, you won't believe what happened yesterday. You had the day off. This was crazy. And then, you know, this new thing comes up. And as the story progresses, our protagonist realizes his partner is the serial killer. Okay. That is, the friend character becomes the antagonist. Okay. Or when your love interest, oh, I love you so much. You're so fantastic. You're so wonderful. This is so great. You travel so much for work. I wish you could be home more. Okay. And then you learn that, you know, the love interest is an assassin, or the love interest is at a Coldplay concert. Okay. Sorry. I've been having a feast with these memes. It's been so much fun. Sad, but fun. I just hope she gets to have her revenge. It'll be lovely. Okay. So the characters can change at any point in the story. Okay. Mary, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just going to quickly ask, from the little exercise that I just did in the last hour, I thought I could reorganize the story so that when Henry comes into Armagh, instead of just trying to get up one branch of society, he starts on one. So he starts to win the girl, he goes to Irish Street and tries to make it in that environment, in which case the Archbishop would be his antagonist. But then in the second bit, he realizes he can't make it there because of the laws and the difficulties for various oppressive reasons of the regime. So he converts and goes over into the other side. So the old lady then becomes his antagonist, and the Archbishop is more on his side. Would that work, or does that get too complicated?
That it does feel kind of like two stories you're telling. At some point, you're going to have to choose one. Okay. So where we tend to get confused, or when it gets difficult, is that you have something called if you think about Harry Potter, for example. Sorry, I always use Harry Potter, but it's just a story that people know most of the time. I'm sorry if anyone thinks that it's not ideal circumstances, but here we are. Okay, so for example, we have different characters that perform different roles in the story, and we're going to look at it now. They're in your workbook as well. They're called the other characters, okay, besides these 4 characters. So what you will have is you have a character like Voldemort. Voldemort is the antagonist in that series. Day 1, page 1, Harry has to be hidden because Voldemort's coming for him. Voldemort killed his parents, who is Harry, and then we learn this, okay? Then there are other complications in the story. Like, for example, Draco Malfoy is a huge source of conflict for Harry. Okay, so he is the bully character, and the bully does what a bully does, is he complicates your character's life for him. He's usually the one, so like the old woman, I would almost consider her to be a type of truth teller, where she kind of goes, you're trying to get above your station, you're trying to move out of this, you have to understand who you are, you won't get further than that. So she'll keep wanting to drag him down. She doesn't want him to do better. She doesn't want him to get out. So go look at who most opposes the story goal, because his goal doesn't change, does it?
No, I think the thinking was that in that time in Ireland, society was basically split because the English were ruling and they kept the Irish down. So you couldn't physically, economically climb up as a Catholic because the laws forbade it. They literally forbade any kind of jobs, earning money, owning anything. So the thinking was that Henry would come in, fall in love with the Catholic Irish girl, go into her community. Because he wants to rise in society, he's trying everything in that community, but he can't because of the circumstance and because of the people ruling stopping him. So he then decides he's going to flip over and try and make it in the other society, which he does, but he uses lots of fraud and machinations to do it, to climb. And then he has a resolution to say, actually, what he needs to do is some way sort of bring the two together to have resolution at the end. It's not just one or the other; it's bringing the two together. So that's what I was thinking, that he was trying to get one way and he was blocked. He tries another way, but his greed and his desire for money take over in the second one, and he doesn't do it right. So the resolution then is to figure out there is a right way to do this, to bring the two together.
So does he actually succeed?
He does succeed, but not in the way he thought he was going to succeed. Yes, so he does bring them together, but he does it through. Remember, we talked about the idea of these looms, these manufacturing looms. So in the resolution, then he finds a way to enrich the Irish Street through the provision of looms, which is only able to get through his involvement with the other side. So that's how he brings it all together.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to change. The Archbishop doesn't change his mind and suddenly go, we're welcome now, you can do this and stuff. I mean, that the law still doesn't change. Yes, because he has more money, he can do that. But I mean, is there a way that he can convert? Is there a way that he can marry into that world at all? Or what were the rules there? If he converted, would he be like to marry and then be able to pursue or achieve?
That's the decision that if he was going to try and make it in the Archbishop's world, he basically has to convert. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to convert his religion and his allegiance, basically.
Yeah.
His allegiance to the king.
So eventually he makes it because he has enough money that the Archbishop is willing to look past it because he likes money.
Well, in that society, once you become a landed gentry person, and once you start becoming like a justice of the peace or a sovereign or burgess, the person that isn't governing the city, you're immediately embedded in that society.
Okay.
So he has a path to become embedded.
Yeah, but the Archbishop would still, I think, be the antagonist there because the Archbishop still knows who he is. The Archbishop will still make it difficult for him, right? I mean, the Archbishop doesn't go, okay, you're welcome now. How lovely to have you.
No, yeah, no. The Archbishop is full of his own self-aggrandizement. So he wants his help. He wants Henry's help to fulfill his legacy dreams because he's not capable of doing that himself. But he still wants to be top dog. He still doesn't want Henry to steal his limelight or his credit.
Yeah, I still think he'll make a very, very good antagonist. And then there is a crone in the story, actually. We call her a crone. She is a truth teller. She's a witch. She can be these things where she kind of, reveals more and tells more. She's kind of the one that takes off the mask.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. So every time he tries to be something else, she's the one who brings him back down to earth and says, no, darling, this is who you are.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I suppose the Archbishop can be the antagonist for at the beginning purely because he's on the wrong side, and then when he comes to the right side, he can still be an antagonist because he's trying to keep him down. Okay, great.
Theoretically, your antagonist and protagonist should be in physical contact for the final scene of the story.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Even if it is where Henry says, do you know what? I have more money than the church, so where I need your approval. I don't need this. I've been accepted by court or whatever that is. They'll have some kind of final confrontation.
No, the final confrontation is that Henry's mother was the Archbishop's sister who eloped with his father from Irish Street. So they're actually family. But
Okay.
neither of them know that.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So kind of, I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah. So he is definitely your antagonist then.
Okay, great. Lovely. Thank you.
It's just easier if you choose one character. You will have other characters to add conflict, but just make sure that you don't add too many characters. Okay.
Yes, and I do think the clarification of the old lady as the crone witch truth teller character is really helpful. That separates her out then differently. So that's great.
If you look at something, these different characters come from something like the hero's journey, for example. And when I ask you, why is this character here? I want you to be able to give me some kind of name or some kind of reason like that. This is the healer. This is the character who always fixes my character. That's why I need a healer. If you don't need a healer in your story, you don't need a healer in your story. But just make sure that your character has a function. It's no, because they're nice, they're funny, ha, ha, ha. Okay, just think about this. Okay, but like Star Wars, for example, has a huge cast, but you can still bring it down to the 4 main characters. We're going to look at something very fun now, which is one of my favorite character things. Shrek. Shrek is the protagonist. What does Shrek want? Even though Di doesn't like Shrek's dialogue, just be mean to my little mean creature, my little green creature. Shrek is the protagonist. Lord Farquhar, who sends the character. Shrek wants to be alone. That's what Shrek wants. Okay. Lord Farquhar sends all the fairy tale creatures to Shrek's swamp. Lord Farquhar is the antagonist. Okay. When Shrek sets off to go confront Farquhar about a swamp, who sets off with him? Who helps him? It's Donkey. Okay. Shared past, shared morals, shared goals, shared past. He knows where Shrek comes from, so it's a bit tentative. It's not too much, but he comes from the same swamp then. Shared morals. They both up against Lord Farquhar. They both fairy tale creatures. They both are inherently good. Okay, Shrek is an ogre, but he's still a good ogre. Okay, and Donkey is all over the place, but Donkey's a good character. And then shared goal, get the swamp back. Okay. And then, he's an exaggerated version of a friend. Love interest is, of course, the princess in the tower, Fiona, who needs to be saved. Okay, and then when they get her, they realize she doesn't need saving. Okay, so that's our cast of 4, and how simple is that? Okay. Let's quickly, like I said, this is one of my favorite images about the writing world because it's done in Lego. What could be cooler than that? So this is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Okay, so the hero's journey usually is shown like this in a circle. No, that was good. Back just one more. Okay, and then we're comparing 3 books. Is there anyone here who's not seen at least one of these stories? You've all at least seen one of them. Okay, great. So we have Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. If you have not watched Star Wars as a storyteller, I would strongly encourage you to go watch Star Wars. It is one of the longest standing movie or story franchises in the world. Okay, I think the first Star Wars came out in 1976, if I'm right. Di, am I right? It's very old. Okay, I remember watching it as a
It's
little girl.
definitely 70s. Definitely 70s. So
78,
late 70s, I think.
No, it was actually made before I was born. That's why I know it's late 70s. Okay, but I watched it as a little girl, and when my son was small again, I watched it with him as well. My daughter wasn't as enchanted, but that's also okay. So it is one of the most enduring franchises, storytelling franchises in the world, and it is something that you can learn a lot from. Okay. Don't watch the new crap. Go please watch 4, 5, and 6, and then you can watch 1, 2, and 3 if you must, but 4, 5, and 6 is more than enough. Okay. So Lord of the Rings is set in the past, Harry Potter is set in the present, Star Wars is set in the future. They all start with the hero, an unassuming regular guy who finds himself cast into a new world. This is often a newcomer in the story. Okay, a newcomer makes it very interesting or easy for you to tell the story because as the character explores and learns about the world, so does your character. Okay, so Jenna, you can consider your character to be a bit of a newcomer. He's never been in jail, he's never been falsely accused, and he's never fled from the law. We're going to learn with him as he goes. Okay, so in this case, it is Frodo, it is Harry Potter, and it's Luke Skywalker. The next character is the sidekick. It can also be the friend character. That is Samwise Gamgee, Ron Weasley, and Han Solo. Okay, so Samwise sets off with Frodo with the ring. They leave the Shire. Ron knows more about the wizarding world than Harry does. He acts as Harry's guide to an extent. And he teaches Harry a lot. And then you have Han Solo. Han Solo has a spaceship, and Luke's immediate need is to get off Tatooine. So Han Solo helps him to do that. They don't have as much shared history as the other characters, but eventually we know that they come from the same place and they know the same things. Then this is where I differ from this. They call these guys the mentors. I say they're not the mentor. I say they're the old one. Oh, the wise one. Okay. The wise one is Gandalf the Grey, Dumbledore, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay. So the wise one usually knows more about the hero's past than the hero themselves do. Okay. So if you have a character who knows who the father is, or who knows, like in Prison Break, like kind of why those brothers kept getting imprisoned and why they had to keep breaking out of the prison. Okay, there was someone with that knowledge. That is generally the wise one. Okay, conflict comes with the wise one. So Gandalf knows exactly what the rings are. Gandalf knows who wants the rings. Gandalf knows what the problem is with the rings. Obi-Wan Kenobi knows who Luke's father is. He knows all about the dark and the light, all of those. Okay. Then you have Dumbledore knew Harry's parents. He had already fought Voldemort. He knows everything. Okay. He left Harry with the Muggles, etc., etc. Okay. The mentor character has more. Okay. So the wise one has conflict with the protagonist in how he divulges the information about the protagonist's past. Okay, so he has the information, but he doesn't usually volunteer the information. He gives it when he feels the protagonist is ready. The mentor has a conflicted relationship with the protagonist. Okay, in Luke Skywalker, it is Yoda. Okay, Luke and Yoda bicker like an old married couple when they do the training. In Harry Potter, it's Snape. Snape doesn't want to train Harry, and Harry does not want to be trained by Snape, but they do it because Dumbledore says they must. And then I'm gonna have to think about Lord of the Rings. Why can't I think of this now? It's almost Strider kind of becomes a mentor to them, where he takes them through the forest. A great mentor example is Haymitch in Hunger Games. He's a terrible mentor, okay? He's supposed to help Katniss, but he's drunk off his ass 90% of the time, okay? So those are the mentors, okay? It's a conflicted relationship with the protagonist. Then you have the princess, which is the elven princess, whose name I can never remember. It's Hermione and it's Leia. Okay, it's very funny. The woman with the vision, insight, and the keys, and a potential love interest who ends up a sister. Okay, you don't need that plot in the story. Okay, so those are, as you can see, we have a protagonist, we have a friend character, we have a love interest quite often, and then we'll get to the antagonist at the end. But then you can also have a character which is called the Gentle Giant, okay? In the case of Lord of the Rings, it's Gimli the dwarf. In the case of Harry Potter, it's a literal giant. It is Hagrid. And in Star Wars, it's Chewbacca, okay? Gentle Giant, initially fearsome, but proves to have a heart as oversized as his body, beards help. Then you have something, this is something Disney uses a lot, is the comic duo, okay? It is Merry and Pip. So while Frodo is slogging up the mountain, trying not to be possessed by the ring, they're riding on the Ent's shoulders, drinking wine. Ron, the Weasley twins are, they're always getting up to mischief. They're always getting into trouble. And then in Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, it is C-3PO and R2-D2. Okay. They are the comic duo. But if you think of Timon and Pumbaa, if you think of Lumiere and Cogsworth, if you think of Sven and Olaf, okay, those are all comic duos, and they are used to great effect by Disney, okay? They break the tension in stories. They've usually got, if you've got a very heavy main storyline, you've usually got the comic duo, which provides relief, okay? And then we have our antagonist, who is, in this case, Sauron or Saruman, whichever one, it's the eye in the sky, Voldemort and Vader. Okay, now, what also happens is Sauron or Saruman, whichever one, is the eye in the sky. He's a giant tower that can see really far, but he can't exactly pick up his tower and walk across, okay? So what he has is he has minions to do his bidding, okay? In the case of Lord of the Rings, it is the orc armies and it is the ring wraiths. Okay, so he sends people out to do their bidding. Those are his minions. Voldemort has Death Eaters and he has Dementors. Those are his minions. And Vader has, what do we call it? Stormtroopers, okay? And that is usually because the villain isn't in direct contact with the protagonist yet. Okay. Voldemort is a bundle of rags until they cook him up in the fourth book. Star Wars is, Vader is on his Death Star, and he sends out the stormtroopers to do his bidding. Okay, so the villain's army, inhuman mass and of endless number, in the end, surprisingly easy to defeat. So remember, the stormtroopers can't shoot. And then the villain is the true face of evil, the one the hero must destroy, the one who wears the black cape. Okay, so I mean, this is lots of fun and, you know, some jokes and all things in between. But this is a very nice representation of what your cast could put. Arwen, yes, that's her name. Galadriel, sorry. Yes, no, it's not. Galadriel is the Liv Tyler character, right? Yeah. Who was Arwen? Arwen is, or the other way around?
The blonde one is Galadriel, and then Arwen is the one with dark hair. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
The Galadriel was Cate Blanchett.
Yeah, that one. I have not watched Lord of the Rings in a really, really long time. And I've only read the book once, and I'm not reading it twice. Jenna, it's fine. Do your thing. Okay. Feed them candy. You can de-escalate the situation later. Okay, so that if you can do some kind of thing like this for your cast to just try and identify who these characters are, it is really, really helpful. Please don't, because I said comic duo, don't try and force a comic duo into your story now, okay? Please, Gentle Giant, you don't try and force a Gentle Giant into your story now, okay? It is, and like I said, it doesn't have to, I mean, it's, in this case, it's a dwarf, but it's just because it is this character who is, you know, soft-hearted. Quickly take a look. This is just, if you go into your workbook, the other characters, it'll take you to the post for this, okay? It's still not all the characters, okay? Go away, Zoom. I feel like I need a screen the size of a movie screen. Okay, so mentor, we've spoken about. The healer character is the literal healer, okay? If your character is hurt or damaged or needs to go to a hospital or needs to go to a, what do you call it when the doctor is disbarred or whatever, you know, who is the healer? You have the herald, is usually the character who calls the character to action. It's that, who's that ridiculous lady in the Hunger Games, Edie, Effie or whatever, she's the herald. I think in Harry Potter, Hagrid also plays the role of the herald, because they sent the letters and the letters were ignored, and then eventually Hagrid had to go and say, "You're a wizard, Harry." So go think about how your characters, your story starts, who these characters are. Wise One, I said, is the mentor. A shapeshifter is an amazing character, okay? In a fantasy story, it's often vampires, werewolves, literal shapeshifters. In a modern day story, it is a psychopath, okay? Because they present one face to the world, but they change and there are something else behind the scenes, okay? Shapeshifters, lots of fun. The bully does exactly what the bully says. The bully adds conflict. The bully makes the protagonist's everyday life as difficult as possible. You have a character called the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is usually one of the very, very last obstacles your character encounters. They're usually the one just before, in Harry again, it was the multi-headed dog just before they got to the Philosopher's Stone. It's usually the character who is sitting in front of the bomb and says, "I'm not going to let you blow up this, defuse the bomb." Okay, who is that character? You can look at character archetypes. Go just and reinvent them. Please don't. This is in your workbook, by the way. If you go to, there's a page with the other characters. There's a link that'll take you to this post exactly. Okay, so you'll have all of that. But like I said, when I ask you, why is this character in the story, I need you to be able to give me a reason. Okay. If you are telling a story that sets in a hospital, there are going to be lots of doctors. So you're going to have to find a character that's specifically a healer. Okay. If you think about Grey's Anatomy, who does Meredith go to for healing? And this can be a psychiatrist. This can be a physical doctor who helps with medical issues or whatever that is. Okay. Who is the healer in that case? Okay. Because you can't say, but they're all healers. Okay, they will each take, in the hospital story, one doctor is a bully. In the hospital story, one doctor is a shapeshifter. Okay, can you see how we don't get caught up with the names? Think about what they do, okay, and how you can use them. All right. Oh, okay, this is also lots of fun. Brace yourselves. I know this is a lot and your head's probably spinning, but when I talk about, we go back in our rewrite and we do character rewrites, this is the kind of thing I want you to pay attention to. You also get something in character development called mirror and foil characters. Okay. The easiest example of mirror and foil is a protagonist and an antagonist, because usually it's a reversal of desires. Usually it's a conflict of morals. Okay. Very, very easy to say foil characters because they're direct opposites to each other. Then you get mirror characters, which are the same as your character, which is quite often the friend character. The friend character is quite often the mirror character because they are so similar. Okay. And then the antagonist will be the foil character because they're so different. But in Hunger Games, how Suzanne Collins did it was really fun. She used, okay, so also very typical of a young adult novel is you have this love triangle. Okay, so quite often what the meme is usually, just trying to, thank you, I can see the whole screen now. The meme is about this young girl is going to save the world as soon as she decides which boy she likes the most. Okay, and that's very typical of a young adult novel. Nothing wrong with that. It's lots of fun. I love a good love triangle. Okay, so our protagonist is Katniss, and then there are these two boys. Okay, it's Gale and Peter. In Twilight, it is Edward and Jacob. Okay, and the same thing happens. The one's a vampire, the one's a werewolf, the one is long-lived, the one is short-lived, whatever you need to say there. Okay, the one goes in sunlight and the other one cannot go into sunlight. Those things. Okay, mirror and foil characters. So protagonist. Katniss and Gale are mirror characters because of the similarities that they have. Okay, so they are both the oldest siblings. They are both poor and starving. They both have dark hair, dark eyes. They're both the breadwinners in their families. They both come from single parent families, to the extent that they both lost their fathers in the same mining accident. They both hunt. They both break the law. They go outside the fence. They go to the black market to buy or to sell the stuff that they sold. Okay, so they are mirror characters. We use them. So this is a way that she used to show us who Katniss was, by sharing similarities with Gale. Okay, then we have Peter, who also, all three of them come from District 12, and they're all in the same reaping. Okay, Peter, the difference with him is he's the youngest sibling. He comes from a merchant's family. He has blonde with blue eyes. He's not the breadwinner. He has two parents. When they go hunting, he goes baking. And he always stays inside the fence. He's never been outside the fence. He's never been to the black market. That's how we show these differences. What's also very, very interesting is in the stories, you'll pay attention. Peter is never, we never see Peter kill. The closest Peter gets to killing is, yes, he does go run around with the tributes, or the, what do we call them? The District 1 and 2 guys, okay? But we never see him kill anyone. The closest he gets to that is by putting out the wrong berries accidentally. And then the girl steals them and eats the poisoned berries. Okay, that's the closest Peter gets to killing. Gale, however, has no problem killing. Okay, and we know later in books 2 and 3, it's his talent for traps and killing that causes the big conflict between him and Katniss. Not to give too much away, but bad things happen. So can you see how you can use mirror and foil characters? So go look in your story who is the same as your character and who is different to your character. So, now Jenna's gone, but the mirror characters in Jenna's case would be the two boys who sound very similar, who are very the same. If they're mirror characters, use that to your advantage. Okay, cool. Mary, your foil characters are very, very definitely low society, high society, English, Irish. Those are very, very easy foil characters for you to use and to exaggerate the differences between them. Okay, so that's how we use mirror and foil characters. Okay, so much to think about. But this is really, really, like, I would say if this comes out naturally, you'll play with it. When you do your rewrite, you can go, how can I strengthen this? How can I add more to this? Okay. Okay. Character biographies. It's something I call writing more to write less. Okay. Backstory is where a lot of your character development is going to take place. But backstory is for the writer. Backstory is not for the reader. Okay. So all of that character biography stuff we do, all of that extra writing work that we do, this is a really, really big, monstrous character bio. It's on Writers' Right. It's huge. Okay, I wouldn't do it for more than your antagonist and protagonist. In the interest of full disclosure, I've never ever filled out that robust character questionnaire. When you go through it, I like reading through it, and then you'll notice there are questions that are asked that you may not have thought about, and then you can add that to your story. But this, to me, usually gives me too much information that I'm not going to end up using. I think Di coined the phrase, and you talk about the busyness of writing, okay? So it's those kinds of things that keep you very, very busy with your book, but ultimately they don't really contribute to anything, okay? So character questionnaires are good. You want to have character questionnaires, and you want to fill them out. But like I said, this is a really, really big one. You can make yours much simpler. My character bios usually start very, very small. I'll start with that socio-economic, socio-physiological, psychological. And when I get stuck, this is another thing that I do when I get stuck, is I'll go to my character bio and go, this is what I've learned about my character, and this is probably what I need to add to my character. Okay, and then I build up my character bios to become a little bit longer than that. But even than that, I don't have really big character bios. I have a picture from a magazine, and I have their most important details. Write down eye color, hair color, and age. That really helps because they interchange during the storytelling, and that's really awkward when it does. Okay, so character bios are really, really good to do, but it's also going to take you it does take a lot of time. So don't waste time on that yet. If you do, this for me is also very second draft stuff. Like I told you guys, my first year with writing my first draft, the fact that I could just write the story was miracle enough. Okay, the fact there was a scene a week was like, that was it. I was doing the thing. Okay, and then later I started adding on more things. Okay, it made my rewrite harder because I had a lot more work to do before I started the rewrite. But like I said, the miracle was having a scene every week. Okay. Okay. Pay attention to when we meet your character for the first time. Okay. Meeting a character for the first time is, it really tells us everything we need to know. Okay. I want to have some kind of emotional reaction when I meet your characters. Okay, this does not have to be positive. It helps if it's positive, but it doesn't have to be positive. If I'm disgusted by your protagonist, that's great, okay, because that is an emotional reaction. If I'm indifferent to your protagonist, you have a problem. Okay, so either I really, really like them or I can't stand them. Okay, I don't want to be like, okay, let's see what happens. All right. Body language and your character. Okay, there are two more things: body language and physical appearance. Pay attention to when your character changes their clothes. Those are very, very big, significant changes. Who here has watched The Devil Wears Prada? Her character growth is symbolized by her change in her appearance. Doesn't look the part, doesn't look the part, doesn't look the part. She realizes if she wants to succeed, she must look the part. Okay. And that is how we see Andy's growth or change. What is significant about the clothing in Handmaid's Tale? When we see those red dresses and white caps, we know exactly who those people are. When we see the wives in their blue dresses, we know exactly who those people are. Okay? When you put on a uniform, a police uniform, a graduation gown, when a bride puts on a wedding dress, when a bride puts on her running shoes, okay, that was a whole plot for a movie. Pay attention to the kind of clothing that your character wears. Harry gets wizarding robes. Luke gets his Jedi robes. You graduation robes. What else did I? prom dresses, nursing uniforms, a priest's collar, a priest putting on his collar and a priest taking off his collar. What does that mean? Okay. Very, very effective ways to show change in your story. Okay. The example I usually use here is also horrible again. Once I should really have happier examples, but they just don't come out like that. But think about a woman who's in a physically abusive relationship. Okay. When we meet this character, she most likely has a very thick fringe, long hair so that she can hide her face. Usually wears big sunglasses, lots of makeup. Okay, long sleeves that she can pull over her face, high collars. Okay, or it's just winter in Mia's house, but just all of these. She wears things that she can cover up the whole time. Okay, then our inciting moment is finally a moment where she leaves this relationship and she goes to a place of safety. Now, she's not going to wear spaghetti straps the next time we see her, right? She'll most likely start putting her hair behind her ears, okay? She'll start wearing a shorter sleeve top. She'll probably still be in jeans, but maybe she wears a t-shirt, okay? Then next time we see her, she might have her hair up, okay? No more big sunglasses, a lot less makeup. Okay. Eventually, when you get to the end of the story, she might cut her hair into a snazzy bob. She's not wearing any makeup. She's wearing a pretty spaghetti sun strap dress. And that is how we see how she has changed over the course of the story. Okay. And that's usually, you know, let's say then she runs into her attacker and she's going, "What are you wearing? You look like a slut. It's terrible. Ah, look at you. And you cut off your hair." No, 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 no. He will comment on her appearance because she doesn't look like he wanted her to look. Okay. So that is how you use your character's appearance to show their emotional change. Because how do we show that she's brave and confident and willing to stand up to this attacker? Okay. It's a very difficult thing to show, and you don't want to be inside your character's head the whole time. So now we use their physical appearance to show how they've changed. Okay. Here's another thing I want you to go watch. It is a very good TED Talk if you have any children in your life. I make my kids watch this both, just because
we have to stop.
Sorry. It's such a good TED Talk. It's one of the most popular TED Talks. It's Amy Cuddy, and it's about body language. And well, it's a good thing to watch for you as a human being to see how to interact in the world. But it's also a very good thing to see how you can show character change. Because what they talk about is dominant positions and submissive positions. Let's quickly take a look at this. These are the poses that they speak about, okay? You have high power poses and low power poses, okay? Your antagonist is most likely going to start the story in high-powered poses, okay? They're going to... Can you see how they make themselves big when you're in these high power poses? Okay, really big, taking up a lot of space, dominating with the arms. Okay, that is most likely going to be poses for your antagonist. Your protagonist is most likely going to start off in low power poses, okay, making themselves small, crossing legs, crossing arms. This is especially vulnerable if you're covering your jugular, okay, crossing your arms, cowering onto the desk like that, crossing your arms in front of you, okay. And then as the story progresses, your antagonist weakens and your protagonist strengthens. Okay, and then you will switch these poses. So your protagonist goes from low power pose to high power pose. Your antagonist goes from high power pose to low power pose, unless you're telling a completely different story, and this won't happen. Okay, I mean, Mary, when your Archbishop learns that he's, you know, the same as this person he's been denouncing and fighting, he is going to have a moment of humble pie. Okay, and questioning himself and doing all these fun things. So the TED Talk, I've dropped it into the chat. And like I said, it's a very, very good thing for you to watch as a human being, but it's very, very good to be aware for your writing as well. Okay, this very funny picture you saw here is something I called my writer's sketchbook, describing people's faces and eyes and nose is very, very difficult. So at some stage, I used to pick out things of magazines. I'd like choose a set of eyes, and I'd choose a mouth, or I'd choose an ear. And then I would find ways to go and describe those body parts, okay, just so that they're, you know, more unique and different, and that they come out differently. Okay. The same thing goes for watch YouTube videos and try to describe the body language so that you can become more adept at describing different kinds of body language. Okay. I'm going to stop there just because this is a lot. What other questions do you have for me? What were you thinking about? What has come up? Is your head spinning, overwhelmed, want to run away? See why we don't start with this class. Is this giving you a little bit of hope as well, though? Or just reminding you of how much work we still have to do? Okay. A lot of this is second draft stuff. Okay. I'm just planting seeds now. You just have to get through the story. When you get to the end of the story, you're going to go, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what this needs to be. And then when I say specifically we do character rewrites, that even comes later. What you'll see most likely in your first rewrite is you're going to do continuity. You're just going to fix the mess you made, okay? Because now, you know, you killed off the character and now you realize, crap, you need the character back. And now you have to remember to go back and kill the character again. And you know, then it's like, it's silly things when we talk about continuity. It's like, okay, I'll see you in 2 days, but you know, they've just met on Wednesday, and then, you know, suddenly it's Saturday, which is not 2 days later. So there's timeline continuity like that, but continuity in terms of emotional continuity of your characters, tension continuity, you know, so that the story isn't like too schizophrenic, you know, so that it builds in a nice steady pace, you know, all kinds of things. So continuity is really, it took me almost 2 years to fix most of my continuity. Okay. And I'm not writing at the moment. I'm trying desperately. I keep starting, but they're very false starts. I'm still working on character, and I'm working on setting a lot because my world building is still very, very lacking and all over the place. So those are kinds of things that I'm fixing. And I'm hopefully hiring an assistant, okay, because I'm not getting to my own work. That is my big goal for the rest of this year, because it might be 7 months in, but I had my ass kicked by this year. That is the only description I can give you. So I will get to my own writing again at some point. Not right now, though. No questions. Nothing. So I've either done a really good job of completely terrified you.
I found it really, really helpful, and I do see how those structures actually will help with storytelling now as well. So that was really, really good. I really enjoyed that.
Cool, that's a pleasure. Yeah, just go write lists and make as many notes for yourself as possible, because you do forget. You know, there's this expectation as a writer that you have to remember every single thing that you put on the page. And I mean, I've gone through this book 4 times already, like very, very intensely, and every time I go like, really? When did that happen? Interesting. You know, you still discover things and stuff like that, especially because we write over such a slower pace. Okay, so it all makes sense in the end, I promise. Okay. But go have fun with your characters at most, okay? And go delve into those emotions. Like I say, if you want to disgust your readers, okay? Don't hold back. If you want to write a thoroughly dislikable character, make him thoroughly dislikable. Heaven knows we have so many good examples of those out in the world today. You can, lots of fodder to use there. And then also, if you need to make your character more likable, but you know, go look at kind, nice people. Do you know what was such a sweet story? It's really by no means a literary or a cinematic masterpiece, but it was such a cute story. So if you want to go look at a character arc, okay, who did I send it to? Sorry, the story is called, I just want to get the title right. It's on Prime. It's called The Map of Tiny Pretty Things. Okay, and it's a little young adult story. And so if you've got teenagers, it's quite safe to watch it with them. Neither of you are going to blush too much. It is a story about a boy stuck in a time loop. It's like Groundhog Day. He has the same day over and over again. And then the change is there's this girl who's suddenly stuck in the same loop. Like, why is she there? Where does she come from? And how they try and figure out why they're in this loop and how to get out of it and what's going to happen. And then he has this moment, this like emotional realization of what he needs to do. And it's just very, very interesting, but it's nice to watch. It's a simple enough story that you can keep track of that emotional development. So it's a nice, if you have nothing else to do, go watch that movie and see what you can learn from it. Okay. Very clear story goal. And then it's the emotional, he has this little dark night of the soul, which is not very dark either. But just this little crisis of faith or, conscience. And then he realizes what he needs to do. Okay. It's fun. Anything else you want to ask me, or am I setting you free? Goodness, it is already 2 p.m. So go off. Have lovely Sundays. Okay. And I'll see you on Tuesday for silent session. I will see you on Wednesday for the deadline, and I don't see you on Thursday. Okay. All right. Bye. Have a lovely week. Okay. Thank you, friends. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. Okay. Bye.